Welcome back, everybody, to the Pros Talk podcast. I'm your host, Dave Annable from Ontario Approved Professionals. I'm honored to have my first politician. With me is the mayor of the city of Brockville, Jason Baker. Thank you for joining me, sir.
Thank you very much for having me, Dave.
Yeah, no, I reached out to a handful. You were the only brave one so far.
Brave, dumb, too close to call.
No, I think it's brave. I'm excited. I've been, my wife pretty much told me to shut up about it because I think I promised you on Thursday that I would get you kind of a script of what we were going to discuss. And I sent it to you in the wee hours last night.
That's okay. We do a lot of interviews, and so
yeah, you're probably better at it than I am.
Hopefully, you'll be gentle.
Yeah, no, I will be because I do have respect for anyone that's willing to step up for their city, take a position. I think a lot of people have been educated over the past year about what politics and scrutiny means because Trudeau and Ford have been on the camera every day. We've seen the yings and yangs, so every Tuesday night doesn't seem so difficult anymore. But you have we talked before we went on the air. Koshiko, Bruce is on you every week. You got last week off, but
I got last week off for the first time in over a year. But it started out as 5 days a week, and it's transitioned down to 2 days a week ever since. But it's a good venue to help get some questions asked and answered. And
it's been one of those key things that I think Brockvillians need to listen to. Bruce has done an amazing job kind of following the curve of what's been happening over the past 14, 15 months. And he has that hot seat. He has, Steve, Michael, and you coming in, Roger Haley, Brett Todd. So he's got a good focus of the area. But, I'm kind of curious, is he going to be bored when the pandemic ends, hopefully on June 2nd? Is he going to be bored and he's not going to have this magic, 2 hours every morning that he packs everyone
let's
in?
hope so.
Yeah, I'm okay. He's done 50 years. Yeah. The guy can take a little time. Well, he's taking, he starts tomorrow for a week. He's putting his garden in. So, but Bruce has done great. You've been doing great coming through on those interviews and doing everything you do. So to get us loosened up, because I don't think we've ever sat in a room and really talked other than committee meetings that I've been at. And let's talk mayor first.
Okay.
So, how many years were you a councillor?
21.
So, are you in the record books for the longest?
No. In fact, Jeff Earl, he is the record holder, and every year he's there, he adds to his own record.
Yeah,
so,
if you both exit at the same time, you got no chance.
That's right, and it's not. It certainly isn't a goal of mine. It wasn't when I started in 1997. Mike Calabas and I were elected the same night, and of course, Mike is still on council as well. So. I think there's a nice mix on our current council of new ideas and fresh ideas and people who have some experience in how politics is different than business, and it is. And so I think that's important now and going in the future, that there's a blend of experience and a blend of fresh ideas.
Yeah, I think I have to echo that because I watched hard this year. Little known fact, whether you knew or not, I was planning on running for councillor in Brockville, but my father passed literally near the deadline of when the applications had to be in, and I just said, you know what, family.
Yeah.
So I pulled back, but we got a lot of young blood. We have some wise people because I don't think any council can be clean slate, which I think is one of the reasons you ran for mayor, was you needed somebody with experience somewhere.
It was, yes.
Yeah. I remember, I think an article from the Recorder or something covered that, which commend you for, because I agree. It can't just be a free-for-all. So we got a nice mix this year and different types. Natalie and Cam, and then you still have, like you said, Mike and Jeff are there, and yourself. I think it was a great blend. But then COVID hits. So one of my questions here was, you were like, I'm going to be the responsible long-term counselor. I'm going to throw my hat in for mayor to try to steer this ship a little longer. You had hopes and dreams and a game plan. So how'd that go?
Well, we got a good start.
You did. And you had a year, right?
Yeah, a little more than a year. And, I did have a game plan. And when I ran, I thought I kind of liken it to one of the big boats out in the river. It takes an awful lot to get one of those stopped and turned around. And I thought the city was heading down a path that I wasn't comfortable with. I thought we had to improve on our customer service, our customer relations, and our mindset. I clearly think we were too free spending on certain things, and I wanted to bring that point of view to the mayor's chair. We had a lot of strategy sessions off the start. We had a plan in place of what we wanted to accomplish in our window of 4 years, and we got a good head start on that. So there's a few projects that are not as far down the road as I would have liked them to have been, and COVID is certainly the main culprit for that. But I think by the time we wrap up this term of council, those things will be at least passed through council, and we're waiting on shovels in the ground and that type of thing. If that happens, I'll be satisfied because I think there's a lot of good things left to do well beyond this term of council and well beyond when I'm gone.
Well, you lose, I'll go and say optimistically, 18 months. Mm-hmm. Like literally your role has been save us from, the shit show mm-hmm. of pandemic closures, restricted staff, restrictive space. Because I know as an architect, the building department, the planning department, I mean, all municipalities, we went months before the ministry really even let us do virtual meetings because those hearings have to have public quorum.
Right.
Or the opportunity, I guess. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to. You have to give the opportunity for neighbors to speak. And then building department, the same thing. I'm blessed. I had 2 weeks where I was literally locked down, and then they came out and said, you guys are essential. So, I mean, that can't play well on infrastructure because, I mean, that's a lot of your tax base sitting there in positive construction.
The first lockdown a year ago, March, was different than this third one. Yeah. In that I think everybody, the premier on down, has learned a little bit more about lockdowns. And so we had just about everybody outside of City Hall working from home or not working at all. In the first one, and it's much more, I wouldn't say business as usual, but it's a lot closer to business as usual this third time than it was the first.
Yeah, it's just a heritage building with a bunch of colored duct tape on the carpets now, right?
Yeah.
I went in to drop off a planning application to the planning department, and Dana was up there. And I'm making my way, and it was it's like there's our heritage building.
Well, we're and one of the projects that we're waiting on, it's approved. We're just it's awarded. All that is the clock tower refurbishment. Yeah. That's in this year's construction season. So can't wait to see scaffolding and things get up there, and it needs some help. It's literally the symbol of our city, and it's gone too long without repair.
And it's one of those things that I'm sure you've taken a lot of questions about. I think this is my first one off topic as the conversation goes. Is there a rationale or reason why even 401, like federal, provincial, infrastructure, municipal, didn't take advantage of the lack of transportation on streets and like even around Town Hall when things open up? I mean, you're right down at Blockhouse Island. Mm-hmm. Festivals are going to start happening, hopefully. Like, let's be optimistic. But wasn't the time to do all that scaffolding and stuff when there weren't people around? Or what was the hurdle from your end? Like I say, I'm sure you've been asked that a million times. Why didn't you fix my pothole?
And it's a good question. And in fact, last year when we did have the lockdown, we were able to get potholes repaired easier because there was less traffic, right. And we were able to close down lanes of traffic in the day that we never would have attempted to do. So there was a little bit of that. But the main thing was you have to remember where suppliers were at a year ago. They weren't available. And two, if you imagine road work, every municipality in Ontario is competing for the same pavers and that.
And so Coco Paving is kind of in the area now, and they're kind of doing the 401 major stuff.
So Brockville has a small tender. In comparison to, say, Kingston. And so normally our road work happens towards the end of the building season as they've gotten their larger value tenders taken care of first. That makes sense from a business standpoint. If we had a bigger stick to swing, we'd certainly swing it. I try an awful lot. And one of the things that we're working on with our neighbors in Leeds and Grenville is to try and tender our road work as a group.
That was where my mind was going right away.
So we do swing a bigger stick. And those conversations are happening. Some of that, shared purchasing is taking place. It's ridiculous that it hasn't done so more in the past, but we're mending fences and trying to get moving forward.
And I think that's going to be one of the. So I have another podcast, and we were talking this morning about, how COVID is kind of the meteor to the dinosaurs is ours. It's going to change everything, even politically. Mm-hmm. We're seeing an influx of Montreal and Toronto, bigger city districts move to our small rural community. We've been pretty hardcore blue voting around here, but what's that effect of all these transients that are moving out of city districts? If it's all Liberals moving or NDP or Green, let's give Green a shout out. If it's all Green moving, we're going to see a shift in voting patterns. But I think COVID is going to, like the corridor project brought you guys all to the table. And I know you all speak anyway. I think all the mayors and stuff are kind of friends and colleagues. But now, do you see that COVID giving you guys the opportunity to sit and strategize collectively now? Is that a cause and effect? 10 years ago, nobody would have thought of calling up the mayor of Prescott and saying, hey, Brett, why don't we go in on roads together?
Well, I think there's a couple of good questions in there. I think there will be some good things that come out of COVID from a standpoint, like the virtual meetings. Yeah. So Brett and I are both members, as Ted is in Gananoque. We're members of the Eastern Ontario Mayor's Caucus. Yes. And so that's all separated, municipalities from Peterborough down to Cornwall. And we used to meet, once a quarter, and we'd drive to Peterborough, we'd drive to Kingston or something like that. We're able to meet much more often because all of a sudden we're doing it virtually. And so instead of it taking an entire day out of our calendar, it's taking 2 hours out of our calendar. So that'll be a positive benefit from that. And I firmly believe the more conversations you have with colleagues, the more information sharing and the more partnership building can happen. And so when I first came on as the mayor, we were, of course, a member of the Joint Services Committee with all of the municipalities in Leeds and Grenville. We met once a month. Now we're meeting 3 and 4 times a month as we've spun off different committees. One for affordable housing is an example. And so we're meeting more often because it's more convenient to meet.
Efficient. And efficient, right? Like that's exactly it. As people are learning that, and committees, I'm sure it's the old stigma that, we get through what we can today and we'll meet in 30. Yeah. 30 more. Yeah. And you put a task off, and I know in the planning world, I've been waiting for this virtual aspect because we can now, I know Elizabethtown Kitley, we're meeting about every 2 weeks now planning because again, it is a 1 hour meeting. I used to sit 2 hours waiting for my queue. It's a 1 hour meeting. It's on Zoom. Everyone's there. Bob's your answer. Done. We can get the conservation authorities, health units, and everyone easier because we all have these cell phones strapped to our hips anyway. We can jump on, say our 2-piece, and we're done. Yeah. So that's great. And I agree. I think COVID's going to re-educate. I mean, there's going to be obviously some negatives from it, but the re-education and giving people the opportunity to connect faster and swifter and everything else. And it was training ground for us because most of us, I don't think I ever heard the word Zoom before.
I had no. Yeah. And it's like
Teams, I just thought it was one of those add-ons on Microsoft that was just there. I didn't know what it did.
Well, and that one of the things with Prescott has its own agenda, its own issues, its own solutions they've got to find. Brockville's unique in its own aspects. With COVID, we all have a shared challenge, and businesses are struggling in Prescott just like they're struggling in Brockville. And so when you have a common need, it encourages wider conversations to find a solution. So I have often said I'm often the dumbest person in the room, but I'm smart enough to take the smartest guy's idea. Yeah. And
that's good advice.
So you get enough people having enough talk, something's going to come out of that, and it can be the genesis of your next big program. And so that's the way I try to look at it. I think it's always smart to try and listen more than you talk. That for me is a challenge, I'll admit. But We'll see. It's been enlightening. It's been completely different than I expected it to be, and I did expect it to be different than being a counselor. But it's overwhelmingly different than that, and it's been a challenge to try and juggle all the aspects of my own life.
And that's for everyone across the board, I think. But like the Ontario Approved Professionals, the organization that I represent, and with this, that's kind of our philosophy. When I first started it, we took a lot of heat from people to the point you said about Town of Prescott having their own problems and everything else or issues. I got a lot of flack from people saying, "Well, are you going to have only one electrician in the group?" Mm-hmm. I'm like, no, I want a broad spectrum to bring everyone to the table. And the purchase power of that, one of the things I pitch is when we do city tenders. I mean, we educate you that the city tenders are there, but you have an open platform where you meet monthly. All the electricians talk. They know if they're interested. Maybe they share some information, ins and outs of the project, and they all go in on the bid. It's great that way to bring these trades. I think up for the past 25 years, I'll say that I've seen my father's business kind of come and go. There was a disconnect. Plumbers weren't talking to plumbers. So electricians weren't talking to electricians. Now the world is united, because we have leaders talking right down to federal, provincial, and municipal and business leaders talking. And we're all starting to actually have a conversation now and trying to make the world better for everyone. So I think that's cool to hear, what you say about Prescott. Like everyone's going to have their own issues and their own intents. I mean, if you guys don't come to terms with the paving concept, well, you're both racing to bid against each other and you're back to the same problem. So
That's right.
Might as well work together.
Yeah. And, it's economies of scale and all of that kind of thing that are opening the door. The other thing is they're about a year ahead of us on their arena build.
Yeah.
And so, we're in a unique situation that we can watch them, see what pitfalls they go, learn from the mistakes, and also do some of the things that they do well. We've done that with Cardinal. When Cardinal built their arena, we certainly did with Smith Falls when we saw the popularity of the walking track. That's now just a common feature.
It is. In my world, architecturally, it's a must.
Yeah.
Like it's where do you want it now?
That's right. And so, that's one of the first times I saw it was in that Smith Falls arena, and boy, did they ever get it right. And so I think, there's a saying, and I'll butcher it, but, copying somebody is the biggest form of compliment. And I think there's a lot of good things. I've spent certainly enough time in arenas with the girls playing hockey all over Ontario to see what works and what doesn't in some. And it's time to bring a world-class facility here to our city, and that's important for us to get that. I'd like to see it secured and organized. It won't be built by the time I'm
That
done.
was going to be my next question, so I'm glad you lead into it.
I like the idea of having this is what it's going to look like, and here's where started. That's my goal.
Yeah, I worked with the city of Brockville and did the trade show for 3 years, I believe, with Earl, and we moved it because the facility, the Braves, number one was the main reason because they were starting to really get good and they were going into trade show season. I couldn't wait for the ice. We couldn't drop the ice on Thursday and have the show Friday. It was a little cool. We did that one year. It was still so damp. Yeah. So we moved it to Prescott, the trade show. But again, the facility was only because it was no ice permitted. So I always find I've looked at the plans and the meeting spaces I think are very key because even as an organization with the approved professionals, we're limited on where we can gather when we're allowed to gather again. And I think, the track, the meeting spaces, and even for operations, I think like the fire hall and city hall are really the only spots you guys have internally to have a big, I know we used to do building department meetings at fire hall, the upper fire hall.
And the fire hall is basically off the list now because they've reused that space.
Oh, have they? So that back back big room is gone.
So it's, and it is a challenge. And I for anybody local, you don't have to look any further than the current Memorial Center to see what happens when you don't get a build right.
Yeah.
And, I wasn't around, it was long before you and I time, but it was obviously they ran into, cost containment issues and things so they started chipping things back. So the stands not being all the way around the arena, Okay, I understand that, but the dressing rooms were built too small. The ice plant was undersized for the airspace that's in there. All of those things have continued to cost the municipality a lot of money to rectify over the years. And this is one of the good opportunities about building on at the Memorial Center is not only are we going to get a new ice surface and make a twin pad arena that can attract things,
key.
We're also going to be able to finish off fixing the things that are holding the Memorial Center back. And that's I think that's going to add a lot of value and a lot of life to that building.
Yeah, and I always like to bring kind of my internal eye because I get an opportunity with all the things that I do to see behind the scenes a little bit. And not only to everything you commented on, the limited amount of storage for staff and facility workers at the Memorial Center, it's really not good. I mean, when the Zamboni's in the back tool room, they're pinched in there.
Yeah.
And then you have your administrators really sitting right out front in front view. I mean, we're not going to put the mayor's office at the front door of City Hall. There's a reason you got to get through people, right? Like it's diluting your tasks in a day. You're there to do a job. You need some roadblocks on the way. And I agree you do, but all those little inner workings when you're trying to hold a trade show that you see that's wrong with the Memorial Center, and it screams cutbacks for sure. Which again, before you and I, and that's another topic, but the Twin Pad Arena, I'm surprised Prescott didn't go for it, and it must have been a funding thing because the Midget AA tournament's one of the biggest hockey tournaments in the area, and it could definitely benefit from a double rink.
Yeah, and it comes down to, I know for us, we continue to have studies done on what the ice need is now versus going forward. Yeah. And it's a challenge. Right now we have about 80% of our prime time ice, and prime time is defined very broadly by us. So I might get the times wrong, but I think it's something like 7:30 in the morning until 10:30 at night. So 80% of that ice time at both our arenas is booked now. But that it's really 100% booked all winter long, and it's the shoulder seasons that cause that to drop. So I'm sure Prescott had the same conversation. Can we keep two ice surfaces full? Because on tournament weekend, sure, it's
insane,
it's a fantastic
but it is only
facility.
1 week.
But you got to carry it the other 51 weeks of the year.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a challenge. I have you mentioned the not having the mayor's office out front, and I have a story I tell people. When I first got in there, so Steph Dunbar is my admin assistant up there, and her office is right beside mine, and there's an open door between the two of us right where we both sit, so we can kind of look over and see each other. And so I'm in there, and I'm trying to, there's this switch on the mayor's desk, and I thought it was a light switch, so I'm doing this and I'm trying to find what light it's turning on. And so Steph calls in, she goes, "Are you hitting the panic button?" And I go, what? And she goes, "There's a panic button. Are you hitting it?" And I said, "Are the police coming?" And she goes, "Well, not anymore because I called them, but
no way.
There's actually a panic button on the mayor's desk."
Cool.
Because it used to be an open building where you could literally walk up the stairs and get to the mayor's office. Now it's pass protected. But
that's cool that they left it.
Yeah, and I thought Dave did such a good job of, helping me transition into the role, but he never told me about the panic button. So he got a chuckle.
I'm a big Batman fan, so it gives me hope for the red phone.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got the Batman button, but no, I'm sure the button's there for multiple reasons. I mean, I'm sure you get people that are upset, and you can just tag in for somebody to come dilute the situation.
Yeah, it's usually that three in a room kind of thing.
Yeah,
but it's certainly never been needed for me, and in fact, I'm sort of scarce at City Hall because of the way we're operating right now. So I'm spending a lot less time in the office than my predecessors certainly would have.
Yeah, it's a whole new transition. I mean, I'm a conservative guy, and Ford would have been my choice. If we went back in time and voted in that election, I would have said, yeah, he's the man for the job. He did what he said he was going to do. He's the same as you said, started to, and then this all hit. He takes a lot of criticism, but I mean, for people to take, you've mentioned family life, the girls' hockey taking up a lot of your time. I mean, you couldn't be a mayor and do hockey, Dad.
Yeah.
it just, I know the time in both of them. It's not happening. There's not enough time in the day. So it's one of those things that you have to commend people for taking that seat, that hot seat, and respect it, because they've sacrificed so much to do the job. And that's where I say thank you, to a lot of people like that. But it's amazing how much that role. So on that topic, when you go from a long-term counselor to mayor, how's that mash up? Like, is it what you expected? Did it, COVID aside, obviously nobody expected that, but let's go that first year. Is it everything you expected? Was it totally opposite to what you expected? Like, what's the difference between the role from counselor to mayor from your eyes and your experience that you've had?
Well, the only reason I ran, and certainly no offense to anybody who was running, I didn't know who was running necessarily when I put my name in, but I believe strongly that somebody had to have some form of council experience, because you can head a company, but heading a municipality is just different. I can say that I do both, and so there was certain things I knew, but the amount of personal exposure you have in the community is something that it shocked me, and I think COVID has made that worse. When I was on council, and getting started, the worst thing you ever had to worry about was getting reamed in a letter to the editor or something like that. I do not participate in any chat rooms or anything like that. I have all the time in the world to answer questions, and you can question my decisions all you want, but I don't do well when people question my character when they don't have the information I had when I made the vote. So there's a lot of personal attacks. That's hard on my parents. That's hard on my kids.
It'd be the whole family,
because they read it, and it's so if anybody was coming to me for advice on whether they should or shouldn't run, that's a decision that only they could make. But I think they should go in with their eyes wide open, that it is, it's gone so far beyond a thankless job, to the point where, you certainly need a thick skin, and much more so as a mayor than as a councillor, because you get held accountable for every decision the council makes.
Yeah, you're kind of the front of the chariot at that point, right? Yeah. Like you're the first name they think of. I always tell people that criticize mayors or councillors in an uneducated way, per se, is, can you name 50% of the councillors? Mm-hmm. And if they can, it's just you're that name they know. And that's why they're attacking, which, again, that's unfair to the person and the family, because it could be totally indirect and taking heat for something. But, the thankless job per se. But, but still glad you did it.
I think I would have regretted not doing it at some point if I had never, you'd always spend the rest of, I could have done that better, or I could have. Yeah. Now I'll never say that. I'll have learned, and I think you liken it to an ex-president of the United States. Very few ex-presidents ever come out and criticize the sitting president, because it's a very exclusive club where only they know what it was like. And so I think it's the same thing. You're not hearing a whole lot from Mike Harper, and you're not hearing a whole lot from former premiers. I know how exhausted I am. And so I cannot imagine what it's like for the premier or the prime minister at this time. I certainly don't agree with everything they're doing, but nobody has any COVID training going into this. So they're trying to figure it out on the fly. They're getting things wrong, but I don't know anybody I can't name a person who would have done a better job in either spot.
No, I've said to a few people that it's almost like going into history. We never know what history is going to be written, right? Like, are they going to just forget about COVID? The ice storm, it keeps coming up. People talk about the ice storm. We're talking about it now. I think this is going to be one that goes down, and I think the majority of, all politicians, every level, are going to kind of get a stamp, and you're going to be graded for eternity on this pandemic, until something worse comes, if it ever does, Spanish flu to influenza to this. But I think it is, because none of you signed up to take on a world event. Not even in the radars.
I watch the CBC news periodically, and they've had on more than once the guy that ran the SARS issue. And, I'm sitting there going, boy, it's been 10 years since I ever thought of SARS.
Yeah.
But if you think back, it was at the time a pretty serious thing. It pales in any form of comparison to what we're dealing with COVID now. Whether it's a bigger medical emergency than SARS, I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
I always tell people it just got out of containment.
Yeah.
It because it is a branch of SARS. It's a branch of it. It's a hybrid of it. But it just got. I think this is my personal opinion, we just got lazy as a society. Every envelope of the word lazy, business owners that were loose with money, they taught a lesson. Tight with money, they're going to be taught a lesson. Yeah. Everything just got a wake-up call. And I'm a karma guy, Mother Nature, whoever. I think it just gave us a little, let's rethink the tool. If we go back, even like a good analogy to that is everyone thought NASA, that's the only people going to be throwing rockets up. We've got Elon and Jeff now throwing rockets, and China dropping rockets.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, we've got guys that are beyond wealthy saying, I could do that.
Yeah.
And we can do it to reuse it.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think there's going to be, like members of your association that are all pivoting and trying to find ways of staying relative. And, there's that whole diamond philosophy. The diamond only comes from pressure and time. And, I think when you see entrepreneurial spirit put under pressure, you see the weaker in the herd fall off and the stronger in the herd come up with things that will be thinking about 20 years ago, that 20 years from now, that are just amazing, and say it came out of the reality of having to find a way of staying relevant. And so they developed this, and now it's a standard.
And I've also found that, not on a negative side to that, but businesses that weren't going to make it got a really quick education. They weren't, but they've pivoted to something they're actually going to make it at.
Yeah.
So it's almost like if we had a label or a vinyl material at Ketchum that wasn't, you were like, oh, this could be the greatest thing. I bet you it is. And you got a sharp lesson that it wasn't, but it taught you a new lesson that was going to make it. It's kind of a little gift, because sometimes people go 5 to 7 years before they realize you ain't going to make it.
Yeah. And with our own business, we do about 80% of our traditional sales is export. And so the local market was not a market that we spent much time on. And as we have many niche kind of industries that we serve, one of which was the hotel and museum industries. Okay. So if the do not disturb door sign on your hotel room door, they, a lot of times if you're going out of Best Western or whatever, they come from Ketchum here in Brockville. So
that's cool.
By all means, take them when you leave, so they have to reorder.
Yeah, it helps the replenish orders.
But
just rip them a little more.
And we do little plastic tags for people who visit museums all over the world, and as a sign of admission. So those industries were just done. And so we had to, you couldn't just sit back and say, well, we'll have to take that punch as long as they're going to throw it. We had to find other ways of doing things. So we went after, instead of doing volume business, we kind of thought, okay, we're getting into the digital world where volume isn't as big a deal. So we can go after the local market. And what would the local market need? Well, is it real estate signs that you go in the ground? Is it, whatever?
The butcher shop. I mean, I've seen what you've done with Rick and Tanya over there.
Yeah,
and even just the little meat labels, their tray labels. It looks really good.
Yeah, I was in on the weekend and talking with Rick, and he said, he goes, we re-bricked the place, and I had 5 or 6 comments. People say, oh yeah, it looks really good. He goes, we get window decals from Ketchum, and he goes, everybody coming through, oh, they look amazing and everything. And he goes, the window decals are a lot less than the bricking does.
I was going to say, because they brick the whole thing.
Yeah, so it's amazing what people pick up on, and they're a great local company. They've been very loyal to us, and as such, there's a lot of photos of the inside of Rick and Tanya's shop shop in some of our marketing materials as we're selling to others. So we have contracts with Farm Boy and other large grocery chains, but it's always fun to work with the small independents like this.
Well, and it's got to give you a little sense of pride. I mean, that's been my thing is, you can always grow your business. Like Annable Designs, we cover pretty much Mississauga into the Quebec borders. Like, we're pumping at 1,200 house plans a year. That most people are like, holy crap, that's 3 a day. You're just a small little Brockvillian, but the 30 to 40% that I do here locally is the ones that I really, really like.
That's right.
I like to, bump into you and I've designed your house and you're telling me how great it is or what I missed and what the next one's going to be like. I want to hear about the next ones, right? Yeah. So it must be nice to have now that local brand because Ketchum, since you've taken over, I've learned bits about it. I've used you, but I didn't know like the hotel signs. Like that's crazy, the amount of those things you must
very
pump
niche,
out.
And it's neat. We just had we do a project every spring for the Quebec lobster industry, and so when I started at Ketchum, I didn't know Quebec had a lobster industry. I thought
I didn't until just now.
It was an East Coast thing. So the little elastics that go on the claws so that they don't pinch you. We wanted to add, or the fishermen wanted to add, a form of traceability to the lobster, and lobster is almost always shipped live.
Yeah.
And so the one thing that nobody wants to do is an extra step. So we developed a system that attached a tag to that lobster. So the fishermen didn't have to do anything different to make their product now traceable back to them as a source and for marketing and also food safety issues. So every year we're putting out 10, 12 million tags into the province of Quebec, and we hire 20 or 30 temporary laborers to help with that project every year. And they stay for 4 or 5 months through the winter, and we always end up hiring on the top 2 or 3 to join the workforce.
That's a good little interview process.
It is.
Almost really like a trial and error.
It is.
Like,
and so it's really neat. And what we find is our employees, so if you go to the superstore today and you're buying some food for dinner, there will be signs in there that came from just up the street. They, likely came through their head office in Toronto or elsewhere, but we made them. And Tim Hortons, the same thing. And so for our employees, they never get tired of going out into the community and seeing something they made yesterday on a store shelf somewhere. And there is a sense of pride to that.
It is. It's crazy. I mean, I don't get to see it as much because houses aren't as common as door knocker signs at the hotel. But it and that's why I bring up Rick and Tanya is, going there. I know they have a huge following here locally.
Yep.
And to see, like you say, made here, posted here, used here, supported here, everything after COVID and so on is all about that shop local and supporting local. So with Ketchum, have you found because I know you got the big window decals now up on the flanking north side. The only thing I said with that to my wife was, I wish you guys got creative that the words changed based on the letters when you're approaching. Like it could say, "Here comes the," you know what I mean? Like if you could have got some algorithm of words that made it look and read as you came through, but then the final sign made sense. Probably have no vowels in it whatsoever. But are you finding now that so let's say we open June 2nd, the world's saved, and we're going to celebrate Canada Day and everything, all this is gone. Are you going to then continue to look locally for these smaller ones, but also serve your Loblaws, Best Western, Hilton type?
In fact, we hired a sales rep, and one of their job title is local sales. And so
sales and education probably, because a lot of people, again, listening, Ketchum Manufacturing, we all know where it is. We all know it's involved. You're involved with it. But majority of people listening don't even know what it does.
That's right. So, and it's interesting. It's been around since 1913.
Crazy how long, yes.
It was in Ottawa until 2005, started by a man named Jebediah Ketchum, and he actually he sold it only about 3 or 4 years in, but to his daughter. And if you think about the timing of that, his daughter ran the company for decades and was really a pioneer for a woman in business at a time where it just wasn't happening.
No.
And so my business partner, Kevin Dalrymple, and I are only the 4th set of owners in all that time of the company. company. So it's a unique company. It started out as a bicycle repair shop of all things.
Really?
But it's best known and has always been an agricultural company where we're putting traceability products onto animals, whether they're slaughtered or live at the time. We serve both of that. So
like the ear tags,
that's
and
right,
stuff like that. Yeah.
And so that's what we've done. We do that around the world, and we're sort of the Nike of that business. And then we have what we refer to internally as an agricultural side and a non-ag side of our business. And so it's the non-ag side of our business that has really been developing and taking off over the last 10 or 20 years. And specifically over the last 5 since we've owned it, we've really pushed on that. So our ability to manufacture is going through the roof.
And that's really cool because I mean now we're seeing, like I say, I love business so much, and I love to watch that shift. So you go from a company that, you know, in that 80s, early 90s manufacturing where it's at, you have a big building, you pump it all over the world. That's all you need to do. You can ignore, I'll say softly, ignore your local.
Yeah.
Right? Like P&G, as much as they employed so much people here, that stuff was going. I mean,
Yeah,
they had this philosophy of making a lot of money. Now, you know, you got a company that, like you said, you're the Nike of the cow tags type thing and the agricultural tags, now going into real estate signs, local butcher shop signs, custom vinyl window signs. Like, that's a cool de-evolution that I think is going to better your local community.
Well, and like when I started back with Ketchum in 2004, we wouldn't have been able to do anything with Rick and Tanya because there was no volume. Yeah. We were set up as a screen printing shop. You need to be able to pump out the exact same design of something. So if you go over to Rick and Tanya's store, everything's customized to what they want. So if it's, you know, a T-bone steak, it says that. And we would have never been able to have done that. But because we invested in the digital world and stuff, it opens up all the new doors. You don't have to get 10, 20,000 pieces of the same thing.
Yeah, you don't have to cost them out on price and
it's
volume.
really just material and time. So easy jobs to quote. We like to keep our prices low. We certainly have a local price list, which is different than our export price list. So, you know, we don't want to gouge a neighbor. We want to help supply a neighbor. And
just as long as the worldly doesn't know the Brockville price.
That's right. Yeah. Well, that's it's the great thing, as you know, dealing with every home is custom. That means there isn't a price list.
Exactly.
Quoting every project.
And I always get, my big one is when I'm working in Mississauga. My first year working in Mississauga on these, I was doing the Square One and Upper Canada Mall retrofits. They tried this Market & Co. where they're bringing like artisan market to. I hope that's not rain.
Me too. Like I think my sunroof might go.
Yeah, I think my car doesn't have a roof. I brought the Jeep in today. Anyway, they're bringing this thing in, and I gave my price to the client. Seed to sausage, and they called me, and I was like, "Is there a problem?" They're like, "Well, what's wrong with your price?" I was like, "There's nothing wrong with my price." And it was $40,000 cheaper than 3 other bids from a local Toronto market. I was like, "Well, my taxes aren't that high. Yeah. My house is actually worth what it is. Yeah. You know, it's like a $300,000 house here in Brockville is $1 million in Toronto, right. So I don't have to charge that much." Yeah. But I remember the conversation, and they were saying it like, did you screw up?
We just had that with Lucas Gravlin. He does our Canadian grocery sales, and he's having conversations with a national chain. And when he quoted a rollout to 37 stores, they called him 3 different times and said, "Are you sure?"
Yeah.
We've never seen pricing like this.
Does Top Office know that you're? Do they know this is what you're doing?
So we got some good referrals out of that, and that's kind of where we see, like, we always talk about doing factory direct pricing because that's what we do. We work with distributors as well, but we're not interested in the first sale. We're interested in the 10th sale.
Good for you, because that's a key that, I mean, small business owners just starting or reinventing the wheel after COVID have to respect that. And the term, I was talking to you about my father, he was a longtime entrepreneur, and he always said that you're going to lose a few carrots, but you want to catch the rabbit.
Yeah.
Right. So
I like that saying.
Yeah. And he said it all along. Just look at you and say, the carrots, Dave.
Yeah.
It's just one carrot.
Yeah.
Right. But that's the mentality, is you want, even us sitting here talking about Rick and Tanya or any of the other businesses that you work with, that's that local growth. You want that long term. You want that supply. And even with the podcast, whoever listening, small business owners, be like, I didn't even know Ketchum did small to order. I thought I'd have to order, a cajillion road signs in order for them to help me out. And it's not true. And that education is why we do the podcast, have people like you on, you put the mayor hat on, but also Ketchum. I've used you for trade show signs, and I think you mentioned quantities, like try to keep it to certain numbers, but it wasn't, you had to order 10,000 for me to be competitive.
Yeah. And it's like anything else. There's economies to scale. But for us, it's, we have some really talented graphic designers who like to have some fun. So you can throw them some challenges on how we can make, an extremely small run still customized to every client. And so every day is different. And that keeps things interesting. But
that's key, because even here at the office, we try, I own 4 companies. I jump between them. I think if I was doing just the one job, I would have been sick of it at that point. I like that, like you say, having fun, changing gears, and then COVID's obviously added to my life, because I've got a dose of this. What's it like to be scrutinized and chastised? I got a little taste of what you were mentioning from the mayor hat with myself, because I've been a small business advocate going that route. So that's why when you were talking about, the family effects and chat groups, I laughed when you mentioned chat groups. I was like, Dave can't do those either.
I remember talking years ago when David Beatty ran for council for a term, and he sat on council, and somebody asked him, they said, well, why would you do it? You have everything. You must be so busy. And he just smiled and said, it wasn't a business friendly decision.
No.
And so I use that line quite a bit. They say, well, how are you able to manage both? And it's just not a business friendly decision. So
I've heard people compare, I'm tiptoeing closer and closer to a political career, hands down. I work for I'm an appointed member with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. So I was a building codes commissioner. So I'm getting a little taste of what it's like up there, and policy and procedure and all these wonderful training exercises that I have to do. It's even in the building industry, they do these, Brenda Lewis, I think, was one of the directors. She says, we're a building code company, not a tech company. Because you watch these little, even remember the old Wimmis, I think it was, training or whatever, and it was this cheesy slideshow videos. So it's still punishing me with those when we see them. I'm like, come on, you're the government. Can you not make a decent video? Or hire something that's not a cartoon to do this, But I'm starting to see that, and I think COVID has taught a lot of people that have stepped up and voiced their opinions and tried to be either for or against what's happened, a really dose of that censorship, but also invasion of privacy that you get. The day I knew I was into it, I don't know if you've had it, but I can't post personally to my Annable Designs Facebook page anymore, because I went on against the lumber pricing, and I got 1.7 million impressions and comments and views on a post. And it wants me to verify that I'm not some computer spammer. And it won't let me post to my Annable anymore. And I'm like, Dave Annable can't post to Annable Designs? Come on. So even social media is starting to throttle when you get to that. And it was because I got into some banting back and forth in the post, and it just snowballed. And I was like, that wasn't, it was a good business decision for Annable, because I got a lot of traffic. But it's time consuming, and it was amazing how people just randomly want to go.
Yeah, and
they almost don't have time.
I think if you do spend any time in those chat rooms, it'll get it clearly turns into a debate between 2 or 3 people. It's not some place where people want to go and express ideas. They want to express opinions. And
I always say boredom. Express boredom.
So, and I get the human nature aspect of it. I understand everybody's frustrated. There's a lot of people who are afraid, and they've got so much pressure on them, and there needs to be outlets for that, and I just understand that I'm one of those outlets. So but it is frustrating when you are sacrificing what you're sacrificing. I consider this to be community service. And I think anybody who does it with the right reasons would say so. I'm not out there to further myself. No. I hide from the press as much as I can, but it's just it's been a challenge. And, when people don't even have the time to read the story that they're commenting on, because there's been times where it clearly says the mayor didn't support this issue, and the comment will be, well, of course he did support this.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, you didn't even take the time to read the article, so why should I take the time to read your opinion?
The best description of that is we've all had the argument where we get 5 minutes in and we're like, what were we arguing about? That's those people. Because I get those too. It's like a post about potholes, and somebody throws in, well, he didn't hire enough plow operators.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the original.
Well, just like COVID doesn't have anything to do with the fact we didn't have that many potholes this year.
Yeah.
That was the environment. We had a spring that went from cold to warm, and it didn't freeze thaw. That's what caused.
Well, we're seeing the effect. I mean, the perfect example of that comment is the Conservation Authority with the water levels. We spent 2 years. I know locally, I did one house, Bill Cody and Deborah Cord. We raised their house because their electric panel was about half an inch from the water. Raised their house, they spent a fortune, minor variances, blah, 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 do all that. The Conservation Authority's taking flack. They did something about it, but then we got a dry winter. And we're sitting about 2.5, 3 feet low right now. Whereas normally these people are screaming from the top of their lungs because they're flooding out.
Yeah.
Now they're screaming because they can't get their boats in the water.
Yeah,
it's like, well, which one do you want?
Yeah, I grew up in Spencerville, and I always admired farmers so much because 90% of what they do is out of their control. And it's all
crop burn or crop drown.
It's about the weather, and so it's like businesses right now with COVID. I admire the businesses who are doing well and pivoting. They're being innovative because they're being forced to. And I think it's. I'm really going to. I think the relevance of COVID in the next year is going to be how the governments, the different levels of government, try and claw back the deficits. And the worst thing that they can do is put extra taxes in. This carbon tax has to take a pause. All of these things, because it's the risk takers, it's the entrepreneurs that are not just generating wealth for themselves, but they're generating wealth for their employees. And if all you want to do is work for somebody else, I think that's great. Yeah. But the fewer people who are out there taking the risks, the fewer people can work for somebody else. And it's a snowball effect. So we can't tax our way back from this thing, and we shouldn't be spending our way out of it either. And I question a lot of the decisions that are being made. I certainly question the vaccine issue, but it comes down to this. We don't manufacture it, so we don't control it. So let that be the lesson out of COVID, in that Canada has to go back to being self-reliant and not relying on China.
It's amazing they haven't. Remember I said earlier about being lazy and complacent. Yeah. The government has too.
Well,
it's like
3M,
we can just get it at China. We can just get it at China.
3M took an investment from both levels of government and put a building on the ground that will supply, N95 masks. Yeah. There's talk about Montreal getting, one of these pharmaceutical plants to do this. I hope that's the lesson that we learn. Because every one of us as a consumer makes the decision to chase the cheapest price. And, there's so much talk about support local. And we're doing that, and hopefully it doesn't stop when this all goes away. But there's companies that are out there for nothing but the bottom dollar, and there's others who are giving back into their community, and we get to choose who we support, and hopefully we do the right thing.
That's a huge point, Jason. I mean, I give you so much respect for it, because it is. You have to look at the company's principal values, cause and effect. I've been screaming from the top of my lungs about small business. I mean, your girls play at hockey. I mean, I got pictures of St. Lawrence Kings up here. I have four boys and a girl. Nobody played hockey. But I still sponsor, it was a friend of mine, I think, came up and said, you want to sponsor my son? Sure. It's a business write-off. It's given back to the community, gets my name out, cost, value, everything is there. But I've got so much community pride that it just has to happen that way. And one of the cause and effects of COVID is people have to realize, like, where did that coffee cup come from? Can I get it locally?
Yeah.
And is it going to cost me all of 30 cents more?
Yeah. And, like, even when you're dealing with, like, I remember seeing comments early on that people were going after Tim Hortons.
Yeah.
And, multi-million-dollar corporation. They are, but not locally.
No.
Locally, they're owned by somebody who lives down the street.
Yeah.
And, they're massive employers locally. So they're franchise holders. So
yeah, and one step further, I mean, somebody I run a golf tournament with, somebody I have run, well, not the past, we're going to cancel this year probably, and last year got canceled, but they give back so much that you have to, it's almost like you got to look at where your source is coming from. Are you watching CBC or CTV about how Tim Hortons did this in Malaysia? Or are you listening to how the local Brockville family did 300 times more local good?
That's right. Yeah. And it's, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of risk, as you know, to invest in your own business and to be investing in your own business when business is not what it used to be. And there's no guarantee it returns. So, I have a lot of admiration for people who are starting things now. Like, there's nothing like the entrepreneurial spirit. And I think it built this continent, and it will continue to expand and develop this continent long after we're gone. And that's heartening to me. I think it's amazing. I've truly got the bug.
Yeah, it is a bug.
Yeah, and
a curse bug.
Yeah, and it's. I look forward to dedicating some more time to it.
So, I mean, let's share a little bit of each other, because, like I say, we're speed dating each other here, sitting around the table. But so, before Ketchum, you were doing, like, what was the job right before Ketchum, before you jumped into that role?
I started at Ketchum in 2004. Prior to that, I was...
So you were a worker at Ketchum?
Yeah, I was. And I was in their sales team, their sales and marketing team. And then we did, two of us got together and made an offer to the existing owner.
Yeah, so what was that? So that's the point I want to get at, that entrepreneur spirit. What was the trigger that said, I'm going from sales guy to owner?
Well, their self-perseverance and self-preservation, to be quite honest, was a factor, because the gentleman that I bought from, he was an Ottawa resident, and he believed very strongly in the company, but it was time for him to wind down. And so he was hiring people to try and sell the business. But the uniqueness of our business in operating in many niche markets, you couldn't go to, say, an agricultural competitor and say, do you want to buy our company? And they all wanted to buy it to get access to our patents and access, but then they'd split it up and break it up. And he really didn't want that. He wanted his legacy to be remain intact. And so the longer they struggled, and he could have sold the company 2 or 3 times and chose not to, and I respected that. And so at one point I said, would you ever consider doing this? And we joke, all of us that were involved in it, it took us about 20 minutes to come to an agreement, and it took us about 1.5 years to get the lawyers to finish lawyering. But
they tend to muddy the waters a little bit.
But it was a very friendly, very opportune thing for us to be able to do. And the gentleman's name's Claude Lalonde, and he to this day is one of our biggest fans. Stays very involved. We wouldn't have been able to do what we did without him, because he was a big part of it.
Well, it's that stepping stones and trial and errors that you probably got some knowledge from as well. From my end, I was working for a company, and for a long term, I was 15 years. And literally my wife didn't know I quit. I went into work not knowing I was going to quit. I made it to lunch. And I don't know what flicked. I wish everyone that becomes an entrepreneur says, I wish I did it earlier. Mm-hmm. But I can't even remember what happened that day, but it wasn't good. It was just a day like, why am I doing this for someone else? And I felt I could do it better.
Yeah.
And I literally left at lunch and called my wife from the car in the parking lot to say, I quit.
Well, and I think everybody who's listening will have at one point in their working life said, I could do a better job than this. And my advice back to you is, I agree.
Yeah.
So go try. And not everybody can do it, but you do not, I'm a firm believer in this, you do not need to be wealthy to get started. No. And if you're doing it to get wealthy, you might want to readjust your plans. But there's a very big satisfaction in building something. And I am the least handy person in the world, so I could never work in your trades. But to see something grow, whether it's a crop or a product or a business, it's so satisfying.
It's almost like another child.
It is.
It's because you mold it. And one of the things I say to people is, imagine if the guy that decided to chisel the corners off that square wheel didn't do it. Just kept working for the guy making square wheels.
Yeah.
It's not that you're going to do a job better than someone else. You're going to think differently. And sometimes I always talk to people and I take a little piece away and I'm like, I'll give Jason credit. I never would have thought of that because that's not how I think. And you apply that to yours, and all it's doing is making this community of knowledge and betterment. Mm-hmm. And it's crazy. And I think that's like one of the reasons I left for all of 3 years from Brockville to do my college, and I came racing back. Brockville is unique that way. We may have at one time been a square wheel. I find Brockville's community, the whole welcome wagon thing, the whole mentality of Brockville, it's a spot that people can make a living, live an amazing life. We have so much to give in our community. And like for my kids, I hope they don't leave. It's just an amazing community filled with entrepreneurs, wealth of businesses, knowledge, and the opportunities, I think, is overlooked half the time.
Yeah, and I think we just need to, we need to stretch the boundaries of what we say are those opportunities. And so the world is a very small place. Yeah. And
I think we learned that over the past 16 months. The sneeze that felt across the world.
Yeah. So our business is able to have an impact in, at least 100 countries around the world. And
that's crazy.
We hope that impact continues to grow. But the biggest impact we have will always be here in Brockville, in our region, because that's where our families live.
Yeah.
And so it's, I agree with you. And that there was a time in my life where my sisters were traveling the world and stuff like that, and I had no desire to do it. And my encouraging, try and do it. Go see something different.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, it gives you an appreciation for what you like best. And so I, through the business, I'm allowed to go and do a lot of trade shows, although not in the last year and a half.
Yeah, it was right before. You were somewhere,
right.
You were in China or something before COVID. I remember seeing...
we were in Vegas when it hit, and we walked out of the MGM hotel, and we were one of the last people. It was empty. The lights were off. The casinos were. I don't think you'll ever see Vegas like that. It was eerie, but so we came back and did the 2-week quarantine and all of that. We left everything. The world was normal. We came back and the world had gone batshit. So and we're still. I remember us talking at dinner. It's the flu.
Yeah.
What are they all talking about? And not in a million years would I think 16, 18 months later we'd be locked down and still dealing with it.
And I'm one of those guys that I'm very logical. I've been trying my best to be in the trenches with all you guys that, again, volunteered your time to, very underpaid time for what you guys have endured in the past a bit. But yeah, I don't think we ever could have seen this coming, evolve the way it did. I remember the first, because I was one of the first to be deemed essential. I was 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I was here at the office working. It wasn't a car on Parkdale. And I'm like, I'm not going to get to see this again.
Yeah.
It hasn't since. Neither second or third or fourth lockdown has seen it again. But one of my predictions, and you were talking on the radio with Bruce this morning about the June 2nd thing. So May 21st, my personal opinion, not yours, they just didn't look at the calendar. They weren't going to open May 24. Like, when they first announced it, I remember losing my mind in the office. Everyone had him on. He announced the lockdown. We knew it was coming. We're getting ready to announce our members. He said the date, and I just, bullshit. You're not going to open on May 24.
Yeah.
Now, I've shifted my gears. June 2nd, I think he's still being optimistic. I think have you followed Saskatchewan's opening plan? Like, have you seen? So they've got 70% of 60, 30, and 40-year-olds vaccinations starts Friday. They're going to hit 70% phase 1. I think we're going to end up doing something like that now that he's announced the color codes, which thank God the color codes are gone. In a sense, I mean, Leeds and Grenville, no hospital cases, low count, we would be definitely green.
Yeah.
But I think getting all the doors open is their objective now. And I'm really saying it's going to be, personally, I think it's going to be June 21st. That Friday will be open, 25th. And I think they're targeting Canada Day. I think they want to say, we saved you. Here it is.
And it's, like I was pretty frustrated by that because, like I have an understanding of what they're going through and they're really going on the fly. But third lockdown, like you've got the premiers putting in 20-hour days and he has for this whole thing. The advisors have nothing else to do but sit around and figure things out for them. And, not looking at a calendar and saying, well, are we really going to open up right before a long weekend or are we going to extend this? But I want to golf.
Yeah.
I want to boat.
I want to camp.
Yeah. Without having to have a seasonal site. So
yeah, we have one booked for May 28th and
so
not happening.
Yeah. There's ways we can get this to happen. And okay, if you're saying we open too quickly, that's fine. But I don't want to speak harshly about the people who are doing the science advisory, but none of them have missed a paycheck.
No.
None of them have a paycheck at risk. And so
you go up a few levels and they got pay raises.
What is the cost of keeping us closed versus the cost of opening us up? And those are two different numbers and two different challenges, and I would not want to be any part of making that decision. But we have to get back to business. We're late in comparison to the rest of the world.
Yep.
And that's tied back to our vaccination program. And when you're just the guy trying to buy instead of manufacturing, you don't control your own destiny. So as I said earlier, I hope we learn from that.
US and UK markets, then, are they buying? Like you're seeing a flex, because US is going maskless for double vaccinations, and UK opens up bars and stuff this week.
Yeah, and we do quite a bit of business, a lot of business in the States, obviously. We do quite a bit of business in the UK. And what we've noticed is since the middle part of April, all of our museum orders are coming back.
Right.
So they're all starting to open up. And
does that give you a sign of hope?
It does.
Because you're starting to see worldly.
Yeah.
Where somebody that lives in a little box in Brockville, and that's all they read the recorder and that's it.
I think we've crested the hill and we're on the way down on the backhand side. And so we've made it this far. Stay the course and let's go. But, there's some restaurants here in town that barely got open after doing, big renovations or builds and things like that. And then they've been COVID impacted for the entire time since. So it is needed for us to get all of these businesses back and operating so that they can start to dig out from their own personal nightmares. And every one of them is unique. Some have done better than others. I think, the sooner the better. So
yeah, my wife would echo it.
I can imagine.
May 17th. We're recording this. and she's been open 3 weeks this year.
Yeah, and I am really tired of butchering my own hair with clippers. So
marry up, buddy. I got cut last night just for you.
So,
it's all about who we marry.
I can't wait.
I can build her a house and she can cut my hair and make sure I look half decent. The rest of it she can't do, but she can fix my head. But so 2 hot topic questions to close it out. Not throwing you off. We did kind of a script, so I gave you some heads up. So number 1, the one from the mayor hat. Well, both are from the mayor hat. Anyone listening that's thinking of running for council or mayor, you've had both tastes. What do you wish somebody would have told you?
That's a really good question. First of all, I would encourage people to take their time and understand that it will be challenging, it will be time consuming, and ask yourself honestly, what are you trying to do? If you're trying to further yourself, I would implore you to find a different way. If you're trying to further the community, then the community needs that. And it's very rewarding in a non-financial way, but it's very rewarding to see.
It really is peanuts compared to the hours.
And but it isn't what it used to be.
Yeah.
You will have to develop a thick skin, and the other thing is to ensure that your family is ready for it, because it is way harder on your family than it is on the individual that's doing the job, because they're helpless. They can't fight back for you. They can't do that type of thing. Those would be my advice. But if you leave it to others all the time to make the decisions that impact your life, you have to be. If you're willing to abdicate the responsibility, then you should be willing to abdicate your complaint. So get involved, make Brockville a better place, and everybody will benefit. But if you're doing it to further yourself, there's other ways to do it, and there's probably easier ways to do that. If you're trying to further the community, then I think that's the right attitude to have at a council table.
I remember talking to Gord Brown, literally month before at the trade show, before he passed way too early. And I was, as I said, getting ready to throw my hat into the ring somehow. And I asked him the same question I just asked you. He totally ignored me, looked at my wife, and said, "What do you think?"
Yeah.
And that was his message, was make sure your family's ready. So I'm glad you hit on that, because, Steve, I'm a huge fan of Steve, and he's taught me a lot along the way. And watching, I think this term I've gotten to know because of my small business. I've gotten to talk to you, Brett. I've been into a lot of the task forces and all this other stuff. But it was sound advice, because he just totally just stopped talking to me, and he just went here, and he's saying, "Are you ready for this?"
Yeah.
Because I think too, like, we could look back to like Doran or even Steve. We got Steve present. We could say, what was it like running as mayor and about the thick skin? Well, he didn't have social media. Mm-hmm. That's a huge, like, I can't imagine how many times you get tagged. I've done it to you. Tag you in a post and say, like, what the hell? Well, here's the guy, he can make them jump. And it's like, I don't even talk to the guy that's paving your road. Like, it goes down channels,
and And there's different ways to kind of represent too. So, and it comes with your style. So, Davey Henderson was in your face, I'm going to tell you, and he used the media to do that, and that was his way. My way is, I have the Premier's cell phone number, and believe it or not, he almost never answers it, but he always returns the call.
Well,
Can you imagine that?
Well, I saw a stat about a month ago, pop culture knowledge for you. Justin Bieber gets 5 tweets every second. Like, there's no way he has a ringer on his phone connected to that. So imagine the Premier, because as a mayor, I mean, all these municipalities are screaming at him for funding, help, state of emergencies. What do we do? What are you thinking? There's no way. Like, I always tell people, even small business, don't give your cell phone number out.
and I know, human nature plays a role. Yeah. So if you attack, yes, there's that, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, there's the loudest voice gets heard, all of that kind of stuff. But it also gets remembered. That's my firm belief. Yeah. And so there's a way to represent your community behind the scenes in an adult manner where you can get some things done. And I think we've got some great partnerships at Queen's Park. We're well represented. So if I have a question, I get an answer. If I have a request, it gets made. It doesn't always get followed, and nor would I expect it to be. But yeah, we're going to continue to chirp away and say we got to get things open, and they know that. I think the devil will be in the details of how they get it done and when they start doing it.
Yeah, part to that. We're blessed to have Steve and Mike. They definitely communicate. I know other MP and MPP region that they don't get that communication. I think we're blessed with having somebody that does take that call, even if they're stupidly busy.
Yeah.
Steve had his team checking in with the approved professionals, I think every Thursday during the first mass of it. What do you need? What are you asking? Where are we at? They didn't have to.
Yeah.
They could have waited for me to hound them.
Well, and I think it's a nice system. I've got basically everybody. I can text every mayor in Leeds and Grenville, and we do.
Yeah.
I can pick up the phone and talk to Brant out in Elizabethtown, Kitley, and we do every week.
Yeah.
And I can do that with our MPP and our MP. Never thought I would have a direct line of communication to the Premier. When he came down 2 or 3 times last spring, he kept saying that to me. Here's my number. Call me anytime. And I thought it was, it's a nice.
It's the line line that he gives everybody.
And then you start hearing he does give it to everybody, and people. And then you're saying, I called the Premier. He called me back about 3 hours later, and I said, he called you back. Never would have thought he did. So
for me personally, I find and just because it came up, I firmly believe as a voting citizen and a small business owner, Ford would call you back in 3 hours. Trudeau, I just get the feeling he wouldn't call you back.
Yeah, and
it's just something going on.
There's 9 other provinces he's responsible for in 2 territories or 3 territories.
Yeah, maybe it just dilutes too much.
And the level of I have no idea. I think it does come down to personalities and shared experiences. We toured the Premier through Ketchum, and of course the Premier's family business is in printing.
Yeah.
And so we had him coming in. The next thing you know, he's flipping sheets. He's doing some. It was like he went back to his summer holidays where he was working in the family plants. And
I think you were just teasing him because he knew he was getting Luna after that.
Well, that's it. Yeah. And he joked around with the press, the people that were following him around. He goes, "I've always said that printers make the best politicians." So
that's funny.
It was. He's. I don't know him well.
Yeah.
So I can't.
One of those rare bodies that you get 5 minutes with.
I was in Houston one time at a trade show, and I listened to the younger George Bush give a speech just after he left the presidency. And I always wondered how that guy got himself elected twice. And then I listened to him speak, and I thought, I'd love to have a beer with that guy. And that's what I think of the Premier, is that he is as down to earth as he appears on TV.
Yes.
He's not polished. He's not flashy. The Prime Minister is. He's incredible in front of a camera. But I think
a second generation Prime Minister.
That's
too.
Right. The one thing you can say about the Premier is I believe he's absolutely genuine. And when he says he's losing sleep over things, I believe that. I wouldn't want to be him.
No. It's one of those things I pose to even to the businesses in the organization is, I always say, Jason, would you take that seat based on what you just saw happen in the 18 months? 90% of us are going to say no.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of those guys that's such a straight shooter and honest. Like I always joke with people. I say my wife won't even ask me how she looks in the morning. I'm that honest. I am blunt, straightforward. I don't want to waste your time or mine.
Yeah.
I'd take that seat.
Yeah.
I'd take your seat as a mayor. Somebody has to.
Mm-hmm.
And people are gonna hate you and people are gonna love you. You're not gonna fix that.
Mm-hmm.
So just do you.
Yeah.
And like you said, not for that personal reason that I like your point about not personal gain or furthering yourself. Brockville needs somebody as mayor.
Yeah. And I think that I hope there's a steady line of people with your mindset. But I'm approaching 25 years in, and I'm winding down mine. So it is time for somebody else to step in. And if we go back to that kind of analogy of the freighter in the St. Lawrence, I think I've got her stopped, and we're halfway through the turn. I got another year and a bit to get us heading in the right direction, and then I'm happy to hand it over to somebody, and I'll go concentrate on hiring more people.
So we got, 18 months left? You got a year and a half left. Mm-hmm. So do you say you don't run again, or do you weigh it when you see what's going to happen?
I am 100%. I've informed council.
That you're done?
Yeah, and I was done long before the COVID. It is not COVID.
Yeah, you wavered
COVID
before
certainly.
This happened.
Yeah,
before you got elected, you wavered, right?
I told a number of people that were asking me. I wanted to be fair and open and honest with them during the campaign. I said, I believe it's one term. Make the changes that I think need to be made. A lot of those are done, and then it's time to hand it over and get somebody else ready. So I've talked to council. I don't know who's interested in running for the chair. I don't know who in the community is interested in running for the chair.
Yeah, because Severson's probably not going to. CC's not going to. Maybe Mark will again.
Yeah, I don't know.
And then you. I mean, yeah, that rattles my cage even, because I like to predict stuff. I don't like.
I'm sitting here saying there's 18 months left, and I am willing to teach on the job.
Really?
So if somebody wants to...
So if anyone wants to do a co-op mayor position?
Absolutely. So
and then spend 4 years getting scrutinized in chat rooms.
So,
So then that's great, and I love these conversations. We could talk for hours probably, but so June 2nd comes along, and let's say they do extend it again. Is the city of Brockville, the mayor, is that where that boil over starts happening? And are you going to start...
Yes.
Start. You know what I mean? Are you going to, small business needs to get out of that.
That's
like
right.
I say, my wife's been open 3 weeks at a 6.
Yeah.
I'm restricted. I'm sure you're having the same issues as me. We can't get staff.
That's right.
Everyone's EI driven now, or whatever they're choosing to do, or can't work, or don't work, or whatever. Our schools, we've got a 2-year jet lag now of people who have actually fully educated themselves. Trades can't learn virtually. After June 2nd, do you start ringing that phone number of the premier a little more? Get on Steve? Where do we go? Because I don't think it's going to be June 2nd. But.
And I kind of started, because when they talk to the mayors, and we have fairly regular calls with all the mayors and the premier and the ministers.
Yeah, sorry, just to clarify for everyone listening. So before they make the decisions, they are reaching out to municipalities to kind of...
Yeah, normally it's
an advisor
36... 48 hours in advance of and the decision's been made, and they're informing you, and they're basically saying anything you can do to help keep everybody in the boat. So they want us to be cheerleaders as well about, compliance and things like that.
I'd be lying to you if I didn't realize that during your interviews in the past 18 months. I've seen it, but I've seen the real you start coming out now.
The third wave is when I personally really struggled to, I'm hearing every day from people who are literally losing their life savings, and they're not able to do the things they can't provide for their kids the way they want to, because they have to put everything into keeping, an employee paid or something like that. It's horrendous what small business and big business are having to do to make decisions right now. So if June 2nd, there isn't a plan that I believe in, I'm going to get vocal. And I am not disputing the health side of this at all.
No, neither
of us are. The need for getting vaccinations at all. But we've had 18 months and 3 goes at this. So get it right and coming out. And you know what? Let the numbers dictate what we do, as opposed to the predictions from scientists. So you can talk about this. In the entire history of COVID here in Leeds and Grenville, we have not ever reached those tipping points. And I'm sure Dr. Stewart would say it's because we played ball, and she's probably right. But we have to do a little more to find a better balance on, the personal freedoms argument doesn't weigh as heavily on me as people losing their homes because they can't operate their businesses. So let's get them open. Let's support them as much as we can. Even those who aren't open can probably sell you a gift certificate right now. Do that type of thing. And then as a municipality, I think we need to get awful creative in the year out from COVID, when it is finally over, to make sure we keep as many of these places open as possible, because just because they open up doesn't mean their tragedy is over.
I know you've been listening to my preaching as much as I've been listening to yours. And last May, I was screaming that, I would have fired somebody after 2 months of not having a plan. And we're here 18 months talking to a mayor saying, where's our plan? They haven't. And like you say, 36, 24-hour decisions just inundated, I'm sure, the premier with information from medical, political. I'm sure there's PR teams telling them, Jason, you're going to look bad if you say this. But it's one of those things that, it was 118 days. Leeds and Grenville was locked down last year at a 365. That's insane. And what people have to realize, and I know these numbers, people can fact check me all they want, 72% of the economy in Ontario is small business owners. And small business is deemed under 100 employees. If you're a small business owner and you've got 99 employees, I personally don't deem you a small business, but hats off, buddy. How much staff do you have?
52.
That's a lot. I get frustrated with 4. And I know what payroll is for 4. So 52, like you're feeding. I imagine you're the same. Like every staff member I have, I know has a husband and wife and 2.5 kids per the average.
Yeah.
We're not just feeding our staff.
That's right.
We're feeding all the families. So 52 times 2.5, right? Like you got 200, 300 people that expect to be able to go to work and be fed.
And it was a tremendous amount of pressure. We've been open the entire time.
Yeah, manufacturing, but kind of.
We've never been our sales last year were $400,000 or $500,000 off the year before that. It's had an impact. We're very proud of the fact that no member of our staff has missed an hour's pay.
Good for you.
They've missed hours of work. They've missed weeks of work, but we've been able to keep everybody fully paid. But that came out of our pocket.
Yeah.
We didn't qualify for a whole lot of the government programs because we were open. And
same. I'm in the same boat.
So we're not. I know when you talk to business people, they don't want a government check. They want an opportunity to unlock the door.
Oh, I've been saying it. I don't want debt.
There.
Debt is the worst thing to offer. We already have enough debt. We took a risk. Debt has never been a solution. SEBA, all this stuff. I apologize to Steve and Michael every time I mention them because I have lit their worlds up as much as I can and argued, but I'm a business owner. And just speaking rashly, a hair salon, the margins are horrible. I applaud any hair salon owner because literally each hair is worth nothing compared to what it took to get it off. But it's like we got Natasha was closed for 120 days of 360 days. She got a $20,000 bailout. She didn't qualify to see, but didn't qualify for anything else. She got the Ontario Small Business Grant, which was doubled to $20,000 when they're going to lock us down. $72,000 out of pocket to save that business. Yeah. And they want us to take more debt. Yeah. That's ridiculous. I just took $72,000 worth of debt to save my wife's, business. Well, it's crazy.
Personal income tax time isn't a whole lot of fun either. So people just you own a business, you're super wealthy. Then
don't you get sick of that in all rational sense? They just assume.
The other thing is, you can just write it off against your business. And I'm sitting there thinking, you do have to expense that. Yeah. To be able to write it off, and the write-off doesn't match the expense. It never does. So. But we do consider ourselves to be very much in the lucky side of things because we were able to keep manufacturing and keep everybody employed.
Do you remember George Caners? He used to tell people, if you're not paying taxes, you're not making money. He'd say it with with his stutter, but if you're not paying taxes, you're not making money. And all these people that are like, oh, we didn't pay taxes this year, we got all this money. I can't express how much they need to make sure they're talking to their CFIB reps, their chamber reps, the Ontario approved reps. Well, we're here because
we did work with BDC. When we took, and they come down there. It's a really great. It's a business bank for everybody. This podcast is going to know that. Yeah. But so anyway, they'd come down and with a straight face, they'd sit there and they go, well, we're going to take a bigger piece of that. But you're going to be happy to pay it because it means you're doing well. And I'd sit there at the other end of the table going, There's no way I'm going to be happier to give you a bigger piece. I'm taking the risk. You're already getting your payback. Why are you taking a piece of my success? But
all those people that don't realize they're paying the bank first on their mortgage.
That's right.
I wonder why the numbers don't really drop fast at the start. Exactly. That's because you're going to risk for the first 10 years on you, and they'll take the rest from there. So no, that's awesome, man. Anything closing to the business community, to Brockville that's tuning in that we didn't touch on?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to say thanks for the opportunity, and also for all those people out there. They're running their businesses. They're doing great work in our community. They're the backbone of what we have as a society, not just from a business standpoint, but from a cultural standpoint as well. I know it's been a struggle, and we're not blind to it, and stick with us. We're going to be here, and hopefully things will be better June 3rd and beyond. And we know as a city of Brockville, if we are fully open, it doesn't mean this is over. So we're here to listen, and we're here to help in any way we can, but we don't always have the ideas. So do pick up the phone. Do send us some suggestions. And 80% of them won't work, but if we get one or two that does, we'll be happy with that.
I think that's wise. I think that's the route to go. Like you said, you're not the smartest guy in the room, but you're willing to listen. I mean, if people can chirp all they want, but if they don't give some suggestion, how are you supposed to enact in it?
Yeah, and a complaint is a suggestion. Is a good expression. A complaint with a solution is something that's going to move the needle. So, like I say, give us your feedback, give us your suggestions. They will be listened to, and they will be discussed.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever sent you anything you guys haven't responded. Mm-hmm. So that's a testament. I gauge that. If you were a mayor that I emailed and didn't respond, I mean, we'd have a different conversation.
Well, I'm surprised to hear. I thought I'd be the last one to come on. I thought Roger would jump all over the opportunity to be famous.
I thought Roger would too, and I thought Brett.
Well, Brett will now.
He may now.
I'll send some texts when I get back to the office.
See if his numbers get as high as your numbers do. I want to thank you, man. I'll share all the contact information on the closing credits. I appreciate it. I know you're a super busy guy with multi hats, and I can respect that. I appreciate everything you said, and I appreciate you for taking the hot seat.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Take care, sir. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Pros Talk, an SME podcast hosted by Dave Annable from Canada Approved Professionals, Inc. For more information, visit www.ontapproved.ca. The Pros Talk is an Ontario Approved Professionals production. Special thanks to DCE Media Productions, dcemediaproductions.ca. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe on any of the available platforms.